know some of you, I don't know some of you, so hopefully we get to know each other today. And I lead a team of agents. My business partner, Sarah Calcagno, is on the call today. She's our director of operations, and she just joined us in the last month or so. And for those of you that know me, operations I tend to lead with systems and tools and models, and I love teaching this class. I can wear the agent hat, I can wear the operations hat, and I will tell you that systems and models have been pretty much the foundation of one of the, I credit to part of my success. And the good news for everybody on this call is that we are in business with Keller Williams, which is a company of systems and models, right? So how many of you have read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent? Show of hands. If not, add it to your reading list, because that book has a lot of answers as far as systems to incorporate into your business and make things easier. So today, the topic I wanted to focus on, so we've been going through, since we kicked this series off probably 5 or 6 months ago now, we've been going through different systems. And today, the topic that I wanted to go through was the next in line, which is lead tracking and numbers tracking, and just general tracking inside of your business. So I want to just get a little bit of information on as far as who's on the call and where you stand with that. On a scale of 1 to 10, so unmute yourself or type in the chat box for me, okay? I want to hear from everybody. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I track everything, I know exactly where my numbers are on every piece of my business, and 1 being I track nothing, I literally don't know what day and time it is, right? I feel like agents, and we're all on some spectrum there. Where would you rank your business on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to tracking data?
Can I start first?
Sure, please.
So I'm Rika. I'm Jeffrey Lamica's transaction administrator. So basically, I handle all the transactions, but in terms of leads, I haven't dived into it that really well. So I'd say a 5. That's why I joined this class.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Gary, were you going to say something?
I was, yep. So hi, Susan.
Hi.
I'm very detail oriented, but when it comes to tracking my numbers, is definitely an area that I need improvement on. It's funny you actually asked that question, because I'm going through, and one of our goals, going into 2022 is to really be extra detail oriented around everything that we track, from leads to contacts made. And I actually had my spreadsheet pulled up as you started talking about that. But I would rate myself right now like a 3, just because I feel like I don't do a good job with it. In my disorganized mind, I kind of know where everyone's at, but as far as having it organized, that's one of our big goals, is to kind of improve that this year.
I love that. I love that's a goal of yours. And I feel like if we can make a commitment to tracking the information, then at least we have data to drive insights, right? I always say data is sexy. Why? Because data drives insights that help us change our business, right? Numbers are only good if we're using them to drive decisions. And we got to start somewhere. If we don't collect the data, we can't analyze it. Oh, there's my dog and her little nub tail just chilling. She wants to be with me all the time when I teach classes from home. Okay, thank you for sharing, you guys. Anyone else? I'll leave the chat box open. So if you have questions and you can't unmute yourself, feel free to make a chat. So we cool if my dog joins us? We cool with that? She's very friendly. So anyways, let's start with this. Sometimes I feel like people, the common question I get is, what should I be tracking, right? What should I be tracking in my business? So why don't we go through a list of things that top agents track? And it's going to be a comprehensive list, and it might be intimidating because that's a lot to track. And my suggestion would be, figure out what's a priority for you and your business, or your Rainmaker's business, and start with, one thing. Tackle that, start with another thing. Don't feel like you have to take it all on at once. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10 where my team is with tracking, gosh, I would say even my team, and we track a lot, I would still say we're a 5 or a 6. We still have a ton of opportunity. So there's no perfect, right? So let's have an open discussion. What are some of the things that you currently track in your business? Anything? Bueller?
So I'll jump in real quick. So some of the things that we intend on tracking each of our team members, some of the stuff is very simple and kind of follows Ignite, number of conversations that we have each day, contacts added to the database, handwritten notes, and homes previewed and shown. And we're also breaking it down a little bit more down specifically to our database and how many phone calls, text, emails, and mailings we send out to them.
Okay.
Also looking at number of buyer leads, consultations, and contracts signed. Same thing for listings, leads, consultations, and contracts signed. Number of offers submitted, number of offers accepted, and units closed that week. That's my list.
I'm taking notes, and so in the chat box, you'll see I'm kind of listing the things that Gary just rattled off, because these are all important numbers to track. So offers submitted, offers accepted, and then closings, right? Perfect. Yep. Love it. And now, love the intention, Gary. Or Steve, sorry. Wait a minute. Your names is confusing me when I see Steve and Gary.
Sorry, no, it's Gary. It's Gary. Yeah. We have a joint Zoom account, so.
Totally get it. Totally. I know you're Gary, but I saw the Steve and it just came out. Tell me, what is your intention for how often you're tracking these things?
Weekly. So we have a spreadsheet set up, and it breaks down every week, and then it automatically sums up the total each month. And then we can have it total collectively as a team or each individual agent on the team. Perfect.
Okay. So love that. You said weekly, right? Not daily, weekly?
Correct. Weekly.
Okay. And these are the numbers of an agent's business. And whether we do the same thing, Gary. So thank you for changing that name. It helps my old brain. I really appreciate it. We track it, we report it weekly to each other, but the agents on my team might be tracking this daily for themselves. They just have to report weekly to the team. So you got to figure out what works for you or your agent. But these are the numbers of our business, right? And so the reason we track is so that we can step back on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, a semi-annual basis, an annual basis, and see the trends, right? And I'll give you an example, but before I do, are there anything else that anyone wants to add to some things that Gary just shared as far as what you track? No? Okay. I will add when I look at, let me share my screen real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of how we track it. So this is simply a Google spreadsheet. We call it our results tracker master file. And I mean, we go back many years. If I unhide these columns, you'll see 2019, 2018. So this goes back to 2020 and we break it up by month, but you'll see like we report out the hours we lead generated, how many conversations we had that week. For me as the rainmaker, I'm tracking how many leads I brought to or I'm nurturing for the team. Not lead, like I don't count it if it's like an internet lead that comes in or an open house lead that comes in, but this is someone that from my sphere or referral, maybe an agent referral that I'm nurturing to pass on to my team. I want to make sure I'm bringing value there. And then with listing appointments, we'll track first step and second step because a lot of times there's a two-step appointment and we don't want to count one twice to mess with our conversion rate. So we do break down first step and second step. Let's see, we use something on our team called the promise script, which is basically delivering to the client during a consultation what our promise is to them to deliver a high level of customer service. We call it our 5-star experience. And in return, we ask that they, at the end of the transaction, give us a review or a referral. And so our goal is to deliver that. Every time we have an appointment, we want to make sure we deliver that. The only other thing, the only other thing I think that we track that Gary did not mention is database appointments. So my goal was that I was going on one database appointment a week, which just means I'm grabbing coffee with a friend, right? I'm doing something. It's not a listing appointment. It's not a buyer consult. I'm just getting belly to belly with someone in my database to build those relationships. And so you'll see I have my section, Chelsea would have her section, and we just report out every week. We leave comments on who we met with. So it's not just, we don't just put, I went on 2 appointments. It's okay, who did you meet with? So we can track the actual person. I track recruiting appointments for the market center, and then I track like number of classes taught or coaching sessions led. So you can tailor a tracking system like this to whatever it is you want to track. You know, when we had Lucas on our team, he's now the team leader at the Gateway Market Center. He would track Miracle Mornings. So if anyone's read the Miracle Morning, he would track how many days he did the Miracle Morning process, which is like working out, journaling, meditating, like it's a bunch of stuff you do in the morning. He would track that because that was something that was important to him, and he wanted to be able to do that 66 days in a row. So you can totally have this be something that transforms to a personal goal that you also just get in the habit of reporting out, right? And for those on teams, the operations team, how you can help is by holding the agents accountable to complete this, because agents, like, we're generally not wired to follow a system. Would you agree? Well, maybe Gary, you're different because you and I might be a little bit of the weirdos because we maybe lean into some of the systems a little bit more, but generally agents are not wired to do this. So having an operations partner holding us accountable and reminding us to fill this out is super helpful. So let's talk about, I'm going to unshare my screen for a second. And I just want to pause on these things that this list I have in the chat box. We're tracking, we're reporting every week. How might we take a step back at the end of the month and look at this data and drive some insights from it that could affect how we show up for our business? What might this data tell us besides the number of appointments we went on, right? I'll give you an example that might help trigger some thoughts, okay? So I love this one. Number of homes shown. I have my buyer team report out the number of homes they showed, right? And then we're also looking at the number of contracts that they wrote, contracts written. So Gary said offers submitted, right? There's a correlation between those 2 data points, isn't there? Because all of a sudden, what if 1 month they wrote 5 contracts and they showed 20 houses? Okay, that's a conversion ratio of 4 houses per contract, right? Or yeah, 20 showings, 5 contracts. That means they showed on average 4 houses per buyer to get a contract written, right? What if the next month, all of a sudden it was 40 houses and 4 contracts? That's 10 houses per contract, right? So that shows you that the conversion rate, it's taking more houses to write 1 contract. And that could be a market shift. That could be a skill set that's needed with that agent. Like all of a sudden the agent just doubled the number of houses they're showing. Are they letting the buyer dictate the showings? Are they not pre-screening those showings where they're, bringing the buyer back to their goals, right? So let's say they met with a buyer and the buyer said, I need a ranch. I need a ranch. I do not want to go look at stairs. I just don't, it's too hard on my knees. And then all of a sudden we dig in with that agent and we find out that they're taking this person to properties with stairs, and because they're not even bringing them back to, well, let's have a conversation about why a ranch was important to you, right? So I feel like at least interrogating and having a conversation with that agent about, tell me why, or tell me what might be happening in your world where all of a sudden you're going on double the amount of showings to write an offer. And they'll start talking and evaluating what's going on in their world. And then as a leader, whether you're leading yourself or you're leading an agent, you can figure out, is it a skill set they need? Do I need to train them differently? Do I need to help them handle objections? Or is it a market shift? And I just need to, prepare for that and adjust our plan a little bit, right? Another example that's similar to this is we don't track weekly, and we should, because it's really insightful. And I was able to get this data somehow this year, tracking the number of inspections you're going on. That's a trigger of a market shift, right? Like this year, my agents barely want on any inspections. But then all of a sudden you start seeing, oh, we got more and more offers accepted with inspections. That's a sign of a shift in the market, right? So the data is going to help you see things coming. Sometimes we're looking in the rear view mirror, right? But sometimes we see things coming before they hit because we're picking up on those trends, right? So is there anything else you can think of that this data might help you give you insights on your business a little bit? What other conversion rates are in here? And by the way, you got to calculate the conversion rate, right? You got to actually do the math to see the conversion rate, and you can do that in a spreadsheet off to the side. What about number of offers submitted versus number of offers accepted? You think that could be a cool or a key metric to understand for your business? All of a sudden, it's, you 1 out of 2, every contract you write, 50% of them are getting accepted. And all of a sudden it's 1 out of 10, right? That could be a sign of the market shifting. That could be a skill set thing too. Okay, I need to dig in with myself, or I need to take some classes to learn more about how these agents are getting these offers accepted and I'm not. Maybe I'm missing a tool in my toolbox, right? Another one might be, and this is where you take a step back and you just evaluate at the end of the month. You sit with the data, you analyze it, you see what's happening. Another one might be offers accepted to closings. You might see, oh my gosh, I'm starting to have some deals fall apart. Why? Is there something in my contract to close process that I'm not bulletproofing it? Is it just that my buyers are getting buyer's remorse and it's a sign that they paid too much, and again, a market shift? So data is only good if we use it to drive insights, right? Any questions or comments on that? I don't want to, take over the show here, peeps. No, we're good. Okay. So thank you for sharing, Gary, all of this amazing stuff. And I think that best practice is to track this at least weekly and then monthly sit with it, right? Just like financials, update the financials, the bookkeeping weekly, evaluate it on a monthly basis. Don't just put a budget in place and then in December say, how did we do, right? You want to be able to pivot. Here's the perfect example of why that's important. Has anyone ever heard Gary Keller talk about the rocket? So when let's say you're part of a space crew and you are on the ground here and your team's up in the rocket, and your job is to get that rocket to the moon, okay? And you're course correcting. You're seeing the trajectory of the rocket and you're moving it so that it gets to the moon. And rockets don't go in a straight line, right? They kind of move depending on gravity and all that good stuff. I'm not a scientist, but it kind of makes sense. Let's say you're adjusting the trajectory of that rocket once a day. And then you have another team that's adjusting the trajectory of that rocket once a minute. Which team is most likely to get that rocket to the moon? Once a minute. I saw someone, once a minute, right? Because if it goes off course too much and you got to course correct in a day, you might not have enough time to get it back to center. So the lesson in that visual, I don't know if anyone else is a visual learner like me, the lesson in that visual is that the more you can look at the data and the more opportunities you give yourself to course correct, the more likely you will be to hit your goal, right? It's the same thing as most of us are in business planning season right now, to putting a plan together at the beginning of the year and looking at that plan on a consistent basis to course correct if we're off and we need to pivot to hit the goal. versus shoving it in a drawer and then dusting it off in December and saying, how did we do? Right? Same thing. So it's important to use this information to drive decisions. So what other things in our business should we be tracking? Let's talk about my favorite thing, which is our database. And Sarah, I know her and I have been working, she's really diving into our database, and we're evaluating the health of our database, okay? So if you're not familiar with the numbers of a database, guys, I really encourage you to read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the lead gen model. So we've got 4 models in our business, right? The lead gen model is a really important one because it talks about the numbers of a database. So who can tell me, I want you to unmute yourself or type in the chat box, the conversion ratio for Mets, meaning based on X number of Mets you have in your database, this is how many leads you should get from them. Does anybody know that ratio from the MREA? Gary does. He's my agent. He does. What is it, Gary?
So I believe it's for every 12 contacts that you touch 33 times a year. And I know MREA might have been updated recently with some new figures, but I believe it was for every 12, you should generate one client and then one referral. So essentially two deals from every 12 contacts.
Yep, and you're correct. It was updated recently. I actually haven't seen a full version of it, but that didn't change too much from what I've been told. So I just wrote 12 to 2, okay? And it's not 6 to 1 because I always said that. I'm like, well, 12 divided by 2 is 6. So why isn't it 6 to 1? Having the 12 is important because it takes more people than just the 6. So that's how it was explained to me. So might it be important, Gary, to know the number of Mets in your database so that you can look at how many deals you did that came from your database, compare that to your number of Mets and see what your database's conversion ratio is. Are you at a 12 to 2? Are you at a 36 to 1, right? What's the ratio? And then in there is the gap. If you're not at 12 to 2, you have opportunity. And the one thing you should be focusing on is improving your 33 touch to drive a 12 to 2 Met ratio. That should be like one of your only focuses until you hit that number, because it's very doable, very doable. But if we don't have tracking systems in place in our database, how are we going to know how many Mets we have, right? How are we going to know if we're not tracking our lead sources? How are we going to know the business we did, where it came from, right? So is everybody on the call, are you tracking lead sources? I see yes, I see no. Okay. Super important to track the lead source. It's going to give you a lot of insight. Katie, I think you said no, you're not tracking lead sources at this point. Is that correct? Okay. Tell us a little bit about how are you tracking the deals that what tool are you using right now to track the deals that you have? Are you doing it in Command? Are you doing it in a spreadsheet?
A little bit of both.
Okay. And is it just that tracking the lead sources is just you're flexing a new muscle, you just haven't flexed that muscle before, or you just don't know how to do it?
No, it's just flexing a new muscle and communication and.
Totally get it. Yep.
Developing
so make
systems.
that a priority, that every deal, when it goes under contract, you're pausing to ask Bob, where did this deal come from? And give him a list of, 10 options, pick one. Where did it come from? Right?
Right. Yes. That's what we're working on right now.
Awesome. I love it. Anyone else? Tracking lead sources? Okay. So once you know the numbers of your database, you'll be able to see the health of your database. Gary, do you remember the unmet conversion ratio from the MREA? Putting you on the spot, bud.
I don't remember the unmet conversion ratio. I remember the 12 direct conversion ratio,
Okay.
but not if there was a specific unmet one. Was it?
Yeah, and I forget. I know there's the 8x8, the 12 direct. It's funny, Sarah and I were talking about that the other day, and we have so much opportunity for that on my team. It's insane. But the ratio that I would say compares to the 12 to 2 for the Mets is 52-1 for the unmets. So it makes sense, right? The people you've met know you, love you, trust you. They're willing to refer you and use you at a higher rate than someone you haven't met, right? Because someone we haven't met yet, who would that be? What's an example of someone we haven't met? An internet lead? Would you agree? An internet lead? A sign call? Someone that calls the office? Even though you talk to them, you haven't met them, right? So what's the key difference between a met and an unmet? Outside of the fact that you haven't met them, like, isn't there a level of trust you need to build with that unmet? A level of validity you need to establish, right? So that's why the ratio is a lot lower. It takes 52 unmets in your database, assuming they're on a strong, 33 drip campaign and following the process, to get one person to refer or do business with you. But that's not a bad thing. You could have thousands of unmets, right? And as long as you're working them properly, you can measure the rate. So does everybody know, let me back up for a second because I feel like I'm going fast. Does everybody know how many people are in your database? I see some yeses, that's good. Okay, so that's the first number we need to know. How many people are in our database, okay? And then the second thing we want to break it down is to how many mets. So let's say there's 1,000 people. How many of those 1,000 people we've met and how many of those 1,000 people are unmets? Okay. And then let's say you know that number. Let's say it's 500 and 500 just for easy math. Take the 500 and do the 12-2 ratio. So someone do that math for me. We'll do it together just in case we need to know how to do it. So if you have 500 mets in your database, how many referrals should that generate? If you're doing a 33 touch that is consistent. Anyone want to throw out a number? You can type in the chat box. You can unmute yourself.
41. Or no, I'm sorry. 82?
I had 83. Yeah, I had 83. Yep. So the way we did that is we took the 500 mets, okay? We divided by 12 and we multiplied by 2. Okay. So now we can say, all right, if I have 500 people in my database, or if your agent has 500 people in their database that they've met, past clients, friends, family that know them, love them, trust them, could pick them out on a street if they were walking down New York City. That should generate 83 referrals for the team. That doesn't mean 83 closings, okay? Because sometimes you meet with a referral and they're not ready yet, or they listed with someone else because it was their cousin, right? But 83 referrals. And so right there, you can say, okay, if I haven't gotten 83 referrals and I have 500 mets, then I have opportunity. Let's say you got 30 referrals. You have opportunity to get 53 more referrals without adding any more mets to your database, simply by having a more comprehensive touch plan, right? Do you see how that helps you crystallize what that opportunity is? I think it's exciting, but maybe I'm a total nerd alert. Same thing with unmets. You can do the same math with unmets. And from there, you can see what the opportunity is in your database, right? Questions? I want to make sure, we can certainly make this interactive. If there is a specific issue you're facing in your business or your agent's business, let's mastermind around it. As long as it's on a, numbers tracking type of topic, just so we stay on course. Okay, I'm going to create space just in case anyone wants to, raise their hand. Okay, what else inside of our database, when it comes to tracking lead sources, might that information be helpful for? So now we're going to pivot to return on investment. One of the reasons we track lead sources is so that we can compare the closings that we got from a lead source to the investment that we spent on that lead source, which means we have to be tracking our expenses. So that's the next number set we'll get to, okay? So for example, let's say we, just trying to think. Let's say, give me a lead source you guys want to play with. Can someone throw out a lead source? Or you can type in the chat box.
Is Facebook counted?
Perfect. Facebook ads. Thank you. Perfect example. Okay. So let's say we've tracked our expenses and we know that we've spent $500 a month on Facebook ads, right? So that's $6,000 for the year. And then we tracked our lead sources so we can show, okay, we had 3 buyers close from Facebook ads, right? We can track, we can literally measure the amount of sales that came from those buyers and the GCI that contributed to our business and divide that into the cost and get our ROI, right? And if we do that calculation for every single lead source, we'll be able to easily see which lead sources are the most profitable and which ones we might want to invest more in, right? Thank you for that example. And that's perfect because Command gives us the option to invest in Facebook ads at a very cheap cost. Now, you brought up a great point around, well, when we pivoted to ROI, we said, let's talk about financials, right? This is one that is generally not very fun for agents to talk about because I know a lot of us don't track the financials, right? And it's a big piece of being a business owner is making sure we track our numbers and our profit. Who knows Mama Mo Anderson, former CEO, chairman of the board. Mo Anderson is famous for saying to have a business and not be profitable is unethical and immoral, right? We are in business to make a profit. So it's really important that we know what we're spending and what our profit is. So if you're an operations team member, one of the biggest pieces we can do to support our rainmakers is tracking the budget, right? Tracking the actual expenses that come in. So is anyone on this call consistently tracking their budget every month and the actual expenses, or is there opportunity there? I see a no. Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. I'll admit, like we track, we have a P&L, we have a budget, we track our numbers. Sarah knows, and if she was on camera, she would be laughing now because I probably haven't done it. I mean, I have all the numbers. I just haven't updated it since like July. I'm a little bit behind, right? So it's easy to fall behind. Scott, opportunity for sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing. But it's important. It's important to do and make sure we're tracking those expenses. So let's talk about some tips. And by the way, just a little plug for next month's class in December. We're going to focus on financial systems in our business. But since we're on a topic of tracking, I thought I would give you some tips on how to get started if you have no financial systems in your business. Okay. I was just consulting with one of our gateway agents the other day who doesn't have financial systems, and really they look at their bank account at the end of the month and they say, oh, I've got money in it, I must have been profitable this month, right? Part of it is getting started and making sure we're separating our business expenses from our personal expenses, right? We're business owners now, so it's important we treat our business like a business and we don't mix personal and business funds. So one thing I always recommend, especially if you're a new agent or you don't have any financial systems in place, is get a separate credit card, okay? Every single expense that you have that can be charged to a credit card, charge it on that credit card. Do not put any personal expenses on that credit card. Keep it all separate, okay? That way, when you run that, at the end of the month, when you get a credit card statement, you know every single thing on there is related to business and it's all in one place, right? Because there's nothing like saying, oh, I had a business expense on this card, a business expense over here, I spent cash here, and it's all over the place. We want to simplify and streamline because that'll help us track our profit. So get a separate credit card for business. And then I want you to get 2 separate bank accounts for business, okay? So I want you to get a business checking and a business savings. This is the perfect time to start talking about it. We're going to talk about it next month too, because January is a new year, technically, a new calendar year. So if you can get these things set up so that January 1, you're funneling all of your expenses and all of your income to one place, it's going to reduce a lot of the noise of the personal stuff you've got going on, right? So the business checking is where you're going to have the market center deposit your commissions, okay? And the business savings is where you're going to take 30 to 40% of that commission and move it to the business savings for what? What are we accruing 30 to 40% of our money for? The tax man, right? We want to make sure we don't spend our tax money and have a big bill at the end of the year that we then have to sell more houses to pay off the tax man, right? So if you can get in the habit of doing that, it'll set you up for success, and paying taxes or quarterly taxes won't feel as much of a burden, right? And I can promise you, if you do those simple steps, it'll help you track your numbers more, because you won't feel like you're searching all over for what you spent and where it was, because you know exactly where it is. Questions? Hi, Bob. How are you? Peace. Katie's going to hold you accountable to numbers. All right, cool. So we've got 20 minutes left. Those are really the key points that I wanted to make sure we talked about as far as what to track in your business. So now I'm going to open it up. I'm going to make myself available. And if you have specific questions or any other topics you want to dive into, I'm here and we can mastermind, okay? Or I can sing. Nobody really wants to hear me sing though. Gary, I'll ask you, how do you do with your financials? Or do you guys have a set, monthly, you look at, you measure your profit?
So we're good at making sure we save and scan in all of like our receipts and everything. We do have one credit card that we use for business expenses. Okay. Pro tip 2, find a credit card that gets you a lot of points because it usually covers all of our flights and everything anytime we go anywhere. But we also have separate banking accounts for business, and we are now going into this next year going to be more diligent about producing a P&L each month and actually sitting down and reviewing it. So that's the one thing we've kind of been, I would rate myself low on, is actually keeping up to speed on that. But definitely something that we're trying to put all these systems into place going into the new year, so that way we can really analyze our financial health to our business.
I love that. And you just brought up something that reminds me, if you're in a place where you don't have any financial systems in place, then step 1 is to get the credit card, get the bank account, get a foundation for you to start tracking and start bookkeeping, right? If you have the tracking and the bookkeeping, like Gary just said, he's got the separate bank account, he's got the credit card that gets him the points, then the next growth opportunity for you is to track it and analyze it and make the time every month to sit down and look at it. Just like you track and you're intending to track those numbers weekly of your business, like contracts, showings, all that kind of stuff. The next step, once you get into that practice, is actually analyzing it, because the P&L, the numbers are going to tell you something. When you sit back and look, you might realize, we're a little high on our expenses. The MREA says we should be spending 30% of our income on expenses. And gosh, we're at 40%. Okay, why are we high? Or gosh, we're at 20%. We have opportunity. We can invest more in the business if we want to. Those are the kinds of insights it's going to drive. And that's when you really become that business owner that is using those insights to drive more business. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else, feel free to ask questions or chime in. We're here to help. Okay, let's see. Scott, thank you. I just saw your chat. So Scott says, no camera, no mic, sorry, credit card suggestions, cashback points, etc. Yeah, Gary, feel free to share yours. I can tell you that The card I use, it's a personal credit card, but I just use it for just business expenses. So it's not like in the business name or anything. I get points back on flights. I have a Capital One Visa card, and I get flight points for any airline. I think it depends on what's important to you, right? Like my personal credit card, I get thank you points back. I use a MasterCard, and I get thank you points that I can use on Amazon. I can just get a credit on my statement and turn it into cash. What do you use, Gary?
I think we have an American Express specifically, in the name of our LLC. And then for personal stuff, we use Capital One, I think the Venture card as well. We see Steve looked into like all the different cards for the best points and everything. So those are the two best ones that we could find.
Oh, so Steve did all the research. So do what Steve did, guys. Do what Steve did. Yeah, I was thinking if there's a Southwest card too, and I love Southwest. They're my favorite airline. And I thought, well, I'll go with the Capital One Venture because it's not just limited to Southwest. I can, if I wanted to take international flight or something, I could maybe get some points there. Okay, and then setting up payroll versus separate business accounts. I don't know if I understand the question inside of that, Scott. So if you want to just elaborate on that a little bit in the chat box, we'll try to help you. For tax purposes. Can you rephrase the question? I can tell you that from talking with my accountant, whether you have a corporation or an LLC, if you can file your taxes as an S corp. Now, full transparency, I'm not an accountant. Please don't take this as tax advice. I always will say, talk to your accountant and verify. What my accountant has told me and the way I've always run my business, and you can do this whether you have a team or not, you guys, is when I file as an S corp and I pay myself a salary, I don't have to pay, I save on self-employment taxes on everything else that I don't pay myself a salary on, right? And self-employment taxes is, anywhere from 12 to 14%. So there's a good savings there. Tax reduction for being on a payroll versus saving 30 to 40% in a business account. Okay, so maybe what I just said resonated with that. Like you can save on self-employment taxes if you file as an S corp. Because if you're filing as an LLC and let's say you made $100,000 in profit, you would pay self-employment taxes on that full $100,000. But if you file as an S corp and you pay yourself a $50,000 salary and you have a $50,000 profit, which is this $100,000, you actually save the self-employment tax on the $50,000 profit. You just have to make sure you're paying yourself a salary. You don't want to pay yourself a $10,000 salary. That's cheating the system, right? You want to pay yourself a salary that makes sense for the work that you're doing. Yeah, perfect. So again, Scott, talk to your accountant about that, but that's the way I've always done it and been advised personally to do. I feel bad. I feel like I should have more content for this, but I feel like I talked really fast. Was it helpful? Did you get some value? So, all right, let's ask this question. What is the one thing? There's a lot of things we all want to do next year, but what is the one thing that if you start tracking better in your business, it's going to help you hit your goals? One thing. What's your lead domino?
So I want to be extra purposeful around determining what those actual conversion rates are. And so that kind of comes down to tracking everything. So I can then be diligent about say, okay, my conversion ratio is a lot lower than, from, buyer consultation to having them sign the agreement than I would like for it to be, and look at how I can then improve that ratio and, improve my skill sets around having that signed. But
that's a really good point. That's a ratio we did not talk about earlier, Gary, which is the listings taken ratio, right? Whether it's buyer listings or seller listings. That's such an important ratio. Thank you for that. And, you know, it helps if you have an administrative partner that can give those numbers to you so you can sit and reflect, right? Which I know you guys have that partner, right? You're working on that. It's good. Awesome.
Yes, our new partner is sitting right behind me.
Hey, girl.
Most people might know her.
I thought that was Abby. Awesome. What else? Anyone else want to share from today based on what you know of your business or your agent's business? What's the one thing you want to focus on that will move the needle?
I'd say the possible referrals. Because
Okay.
besides, instead of looking outside the database, we should refocus on what we already have. And I'd say that would save some expenses regarding the paid ads and all of that.
Awesome. I love that. So you're talking about, I think what you're talking about is health of the database, right? And your
Yeah.
Met's conversion ratio.
Yes.
I love that. I'll share for Sarah, who's on the call. Her and I have been talking a lot about the database, and one of her one things is the database. And I would say, I'd be interested to see what she would say. I would say our database is probably our number one opportunity, and we do really well with our database. And I still think we have untapped opportunity inside of the database.
Yes, because we just transitioned into being a team with Jeffrey, and I've been with him for 11 months, and we're still getting in the process of focusing and improving our database health score. So that would be very helpful for you know, our business plan next year.
Love that. Do you guys use Command for your database
Yeah.
tool?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So one cool thing about Command is that they do have a database health score right built in, where they'll analyze based on certain criteria the health of your database, you know, the number of contacts, the number of smart plans you have running, things like that. I don't think it's a super elaborate score, but it gives you a general idea. So that's great. Thank you for sharing.
I can tell you that we're working on database from a different standpoint, and we are looking at it as Bob's been in the business for 40 years. So part of his problem is that a lot of what he does right now is he's selling houses for people to move into different apartments or assisted living. So we're working on, do we need to nurture that part of the database, or do we need to work on growing a younger database?
Or can you do both?
Right, or how to do both, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And how to do, because basically how to do a fully paper system and a fully electronic system, because you're working on two ends of the age spectrum.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's when you start getting into niche marketing, or niche, I forget how you pronounce it. Marketing, where you are speaking to that specific consumer, right? And the message for someone that's downsizing or moving into assisted living is a very different message than a first-time home buyer, right? Or a luxury buyer or a flipper, right? And I feel like once you develop a really good foundation for your database in terms of you understand the health, you have your tags sorted out so you know exactly who's in it, and you can slice it and dice it and report out on your database, then you can start really having some fun with it and get some real custom marketing campaigns and use smart plans and all that jazz. Yeah, Scott says database too. That's his focus. Touches, more consistent and purposeful. Yeah. And here's the thing, guys. We all know there's a company that begins with a Z, Zillow, and Realtor.com, and other big companies that, as much as there's opportunities for us to lead generate with them, and there's many teams, myself included, that we still lead generate through those platforms, they also are out to get a piece of your hard-earned commission, our hard-earned commission, right? We see a lot of platforms that are offering leads for 25 to 40%. And here's the reality. If we don't stay in close contact with our database and in those relationships, Zillow and Realtor.com and other tech companies will get in the way of those relationships. Why? Because there's a story someone told at Family Reunion last year where the agent had she found out that one of her past clients listed a house with Zillow, with a Zillow rep, because Zillow has agents. I think it was in like Washington. And she was so bummed because she literally was just at dinner at that person's house the week before and brought them a pie, and they had dinner. And in that week period, the person got communication from Zillow and had that agent in and decided to list with that agent. So that technology got in the way of that relationship, even though she was literally in their house for dinner, right? So I just say that, like, there are companies out there that are trying to get in the way of your relationship with your clients, which means doubling down on our database and those relationships is really more important than ever. Okay. Awesome. I wish I had more to share, but I don't today. I feel like I usually talk right up to the last minute. But I'll hang around if anyone needs any more help or ideas. Hi, Shannon. I didn't even see that you were on. Hi, girlfriend. Shannon's our listing coordinator on SGT. She does a lot of tracking for us, as well as Brittany. Oh, you know what we didn't talk about, guys? As far as numbers to track? Oh my gosh, Brittany would be so upset with me if she was on. Reviews. Do you track your reviews? And we track them by platform. So we know every month how many reviews we added on Google, how many reviews we added on Zillow, on Realtor.com. We have some key platforms that we push people to. So we push people to Google, we push people to Facebook, and then a little bit to Zillow and a little bit to Realtor.com. I think Google is a really important one. Google is the #1 search engine in the world. And Google is one. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you. I'll back up for a second. I talk with agents from other companies all the time, right? My goal is to recruit them to Keller Williams and change their life as a broker in the Canandaigua office. And there are some agents that have put their reviews on their website, their broker's website. So when they leave, guess who keeps those reviews? Their broker, right? Whereas if they were to put those leads on their Facebook business page or their Google business page or their Zillow page, they take that profile with them no matter where they go, right? So definitely measure those reviews and have a review goal rate. So our goal rate, and we got this from other teams around the country, is 3 out of 4. So for every 4 closings, we want to generate 3 reviews. And we want those reviews to be 4.5 stars or better, or we don't count it. And let's break that down for a second. Let's say you have 100 closings for easy math, okay? 100 closings. That means we want 75 reviews, right? 75%. Out of those 100 closings, think about how many parties you dealt with. Probably 60 to 70% of those deals was a couple. So you had 2 parties that could potentially write you a review, right? So let's say you have 100 closings, maybe that's 160 people that you actually served. And then let's say out of those 100 closings, there was an agent on the other side of them. And some of the agents you worked with 2 or 3 times. So let's say you had 50 unique agents that you worked with, right? So that's 160 people plus 50 agents. That's 210 people, not including lenders and attorneys, right? So 210 people and you have a goal of 75 reviews. What's that conversion rate? What's 75 divided by 210? Can someone do the math for me? It's less than 50%. It's probably 40% or something.
36%.
Thank you, 36%. So you can look at it and say, okay, basically I want 1 out of every 3 people I deal with to leave a review, or 3 out of 4 closings, right? When you start to break it down like that, it seems really realistic. But if we don't have a goal for the number of reviews we want to get, are we likely to get there? If we're not tracking it, are we likely to get there, right? We even go so far on our team, we track reviews and then we track our competitors. And I say competitors, friendly competitors. We track KW teams, we track non-KW teams. We want to see what they're doing, right? And we want to make sure that we're at the same pace or better, just friendly competition. So understanding who's out there and who's doing what, I think is important too. You'd be surprised the number of top teams out there that don't have a lot of reviews. They've been in the business for years and years and years and years, and just reviews were never a thing. You can tell they never made it a thing. But why do we care about reviews, guys? I heard someone say once, oh, sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say, I mean, a lot of the people that we haven't met that are internet leads are usually finding us based on our reviews online.
100%. And you know what else I learned? Even if someone is referred to you from your database, let's say your cousin refers their coworker, what do you think the first person that coworker does before they pick up the phone to call you? They probably Google you, right? They probably want to find out what other people say. And if you have a 2-star review or no reviews, they might not pick up the phone, right? So the better you can show up online and have an online presence and reviews that support the referring source, the better. Cool, so we will end with that. Thank you for taking time out of your day to focus on your systems. I thank you, your agents thank you, your business will thank you, your family will thank you. Next month, just a heads up, we're gonna be, like I said, focusing on financial systems. And that class is going to be actually a couple days before Christmas, December 22nd. So end the month with me talking about financials, and it could be a good, good conversation around taxes too for the end of the year. Okay. Thank you so much, you guys. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, Susan.
you.
Good seeing you.
You're welcome. You too. Bye.